Have you ever felt that your life was on an emotional roller coaster? One moment filled with hope, the next plunged into deep sorrow? Even saints experience these dramatic shifts. Today, I want to share a powerful prophetic dream that changed everything for Don Bosco during the challenging Christmas of 1845, a time that was marked by crushing disappointment, divine revelation, and faith that ultimately transformed countless lives. I'm your host, Adrian Fonseca. Subscribe for new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Welcome to the Miracles and Prophecies of St. Don Bosco. I'm Adrian Fonseca. These videos share timeless wisdom from Don Bosco's life that can transform your spiritual journey. Our hope is that through these stories, you'll grow closer to Christ and Our Lady. In today's story, we'll explore a critical moment in Don Bosco's journey when his oratory had no home and his entire mission seemed to be falling apart. As we dive into this remarkable story, I want you to notice how Don Bosco persevered when facing seemingly impossible obstacles. The divine guidance that arrived precisely when he was at his lowest point, and how maintaining hope and faith transformed an impossible situation. And as you watch, ask yourself, have you ever received guidance during a difficult time that later proved crucial to your life's path? How did you respond? It was the fourth Sunday of Advent, December 22nd, 1845, just 3 days before Christmas. For Don Bosco and his boys, this was a devastating day. They were being forced to abandon St. Martin's Church completely. This was the last place that they had been allowed to gather. And with nowhere else to go, Don Bosco turned to his boys and said with surprising confidence, "Patience. The Blessed Virgin will help us. Let's search for another place." "Who will find one for us?" the boys asked anxiously. Don Bosco replied with conviction, "He who prepares nests for birds and shelter for animals in the caves. No, he will not forget us." Christmas Day arrived, but it was nothing like their celebration the previous year. The weather had turned bitterly cold. The boys poured into Don Bosco's tiny room at the refuge, a space already cluttered with sports equipment and church objects. There simply wasn't enough room for everyone. Can you imagine this scene? Don Bosco, surrounded by dozens of children ready to follow him anywhere, but without an inch of space to gather them. They managed to attend the 3 masses at a nearby church. However, there was a cloud of sadness that hung over everyone. Though certainly distressed himself, Don Bosco refused to show it. Instead, he brightened the mood by telling them about the magnificent future oratory, which of course at that point existed only in his mind and in God's plan. "Fear not, my dear children," he told them with genuine enthusiasm. "A beautiful building is already prepared for you. We'll soon take possession of it. We'll have a beautiful church, a large house, spacious courtyards, and countless young people will come to play, pray, and work." The most remarkable part? The boys believed him. They repeated Don Bosco's prophecy to each other, adding their own little embellishments as children do. Their gloomy Christmas was transformed into one as joyful as a year before. A few nights later, everything Don Bosco had described to the boys came alive in a very powerful prophetic dream. In the dream, Don Bosco found himself standing at the northern edge of Turin. About 200 feet away, he saw 3 radiant young men standing in a field planted with potatoes, beans, and cabbage. They stood in the exact place that in a previous dream had been the scene of the glorious martyrdom of 3 soldiers from the Theban Legion. These luminous figures beckoned him to join them. Don Bosco hurried to their side, and together they walked, until they reached the very ground where the Church of Mary Help of Christians now stands magnificently today. Suddenly, Don Bosco found himself standing before a majestic woman of indescribable beauty and splendor. Near her stood a gathering of elderly men who resembled princes. Around this queen-like figure gathered countless people adorned with dazzling grace. Beyond them stretched even more hosts as far as Don Bosco could see. This heavenly lady stood precisely where the high altar of the great church now stands. She invited Don Bosco to approach her. As he stood beside her, she introduced him to the three young men who had guided him, Solutor, Advintor, and Octavius. She indicated that these three martyrs would be special patrons of the church that he would build there one day. With a warm smile and words filled with affection, she encouraged Don Bosco not to abandon his young people, but to continue with even greater dedication. She warned him that he would face serious obstacles, but promised that these would all be overcome through his trust in the Mother of God and her divine Son. Finally, she showed him a house that actually existed in reality, which he later learned belonged to the man by the name of Mr. Pinardi. And there was a small church precisely where the Church of St. Francis de Sales stands today, with its adjoining buildings. Raising her right hand, she proclaimed in a voice of indescribable harmony, "This is my house, therefore it is my glory." At these powerful words, Don Bosco was so moved that he awoke from his dream. The vision of the Blessed Virgin and the entire scene slowly vanished like morning mist at sunrise. He immediately fell to his knees and renewed his dedication to the great work before him. That morning, filled with enthusiasm, Don Bosco rushed to find the house that the Virgin had shown him in the dream. As he left his room, he excitedly told theologian Borel, "I'm going to see a house perfect for our oratory." But what a crushing disappointment awaited him. When he arrived at the location, he discovered it was a house of ill repute. With his head hanging low, Don Bosco returned to the refuge. When questioned by Borel, he simply replied, without further explanation, that the house he had seen wouldn't serve their purpose. Poor Don Bosco, to have his hopes raised so high by the dream, only to have them temporarily shattered by reality. But could this dream really be from heaven? Would this prophetic vision eventually come true despite this initial setback? Or was it all just wishful thinking from an exhausted priest with nowhere else to take his boys? This reminds me of how our own lives sometimes feel. Moments when God seems to promise something wonderful, but reality appears to contradict it. In Don Bosco's writings, especially his Roadmap to Heaven, he offers profound wisdom for navigating these challenging spiritual moments. Don Bosco wrote many books, but two of his most spiritually powerful works are his Roadmap to Heaven and Sacred History. Sadly, these powerful books can be very difficult to find today, which is why we here at Miracles and Prophecies of St. John Bosco began publishing them ourselves. And now we offer them as gifts to our promoters of Don Bosco. When you become one of our monthly promoters, you receive these and other inspiring gifts to strengthen your spiritual journey. You can join right now by clicking the link in the description box down below. Despite this initial setback, Don Bosco's faith in Our Lady's promise never wavered. So what happened with Don Bosco's prophetic dream? In 1846, just months after this Christmas disappointment, something quite remarkable happened. Don Bosco was able to rent a dilapidated shed from a man by the name of Francesco Pinardi. Yes, the very same Pinardi from his dream. Though initially unsuitable and requiring extensive renovation, this humble Pinardi shed became the first permanent home of the Oratory of St. Francis de Sales. From these modest beginnings, Don Bosco's dream slowly started to take form in reality. He eventually purchased the property outright, and by 1852, he had built a church dedicated to St. Francis de Sales, exactly as he had seen in his vision. And that wasn't all. By 1868, the magnificent Basilica of Mary Help of Christians was completed on the very site where the Blessed Virgin had appeared to him in his dream. So how exactly did Don Bosco acquire Pinardi's property? What happened to the house of ill repute? How was he able to build the magnificent Basilica of Mary Help of Christians? Well, unfortunately, these are stories for another video. But the start of it all began during this pivotal Christmas of 1845. The prophetic dream that Don Bosco received that night offers us profound lessons for our lives today. So what can we learn from this powerful vision? First, even in your darkest moments, divine guidance may be preparing you for something greater than you can possibly imagine. Don Bosco's dream, though seemingly contradicted by immediate reality, was fulfilled beyond his wildest expectations. Just not on his timeline. Second, there is remarkable power in hope. Notice how Don Bosco's confidence instantly lifted the spirits of his boys, transforming their somber Christmas into one of joy and anticipation. Your hope can do the same for those around you, even when you don't yet see the path forward. Finally, perseverance matters enormously when facing obstacles. Despite finding a house of ill repute where he expected his oratory to be, Don Bosco didn't abandon his mission or lose faith in his divine calling. His persistence led to one of the greatest ministries in church history. And as you face your own challenges and disappointments, draw inspiration from Don Bosco's experience. Like him, trust that your current struggles may be preparing the way for future blessings. Maintain hope, even when circumstances seem to contradict God's promise. But what aspects of Don Bosco's prophetic story resonated with you the most? Share your thoughts in the comment section down below because I would love to hear from you. If you found today's video helpful, you might also enjoy our video, How to Find Hope After Losing Your Home, where we explore how Don Bosco's experience can provide comfort and guidance for those who have lost their homes to natural disasters. His message reminds us that losing everything is not the end of their story, and often it's just the beginning of God's greater plan. Thank you for joining me today. St. John Bosco, pray for us. May God bless you, and Mary Immaculate keep you under her mantle. God love you.